Let me call upon our next presenter, Phoebe O'Hara, Battery, EV and ESS Lead Analyst, Fast Markets. She would be presenting on risk in the battery supply chain with a focus on raw material and lithium supply.
Brilliant. Oh, I can hear myself. Good afternoon, everybody. It's the afternoon session near lunch. Everybody must be a bit tired, but we're going to have some fun right now. We're going to be, as the lovely presenter just explained, my name's Phoebe. I am from Fast Markets, and today we are going to be looking at something which many people in the supply chain aren't really talking enough about, and we're going to engage with that a bit more today. So we're going to be talking about lithium as part of the supply chain and amongst other battery raw materials, and thinking about some of the risks that may come over the decade, despite us currently being in a period of oversupply. So who are Fast Markets? If you don't have the pleasure of knowing us already, Fast Markets is a leading commodities price reporting agency. We are global and we price, to be honest, everything. The leading prices that you guys would be interested in is lithium. So we have the benchmark in lithium pricing. So any upstream or cell manufacturers in the room will likely know of us because they're going to be resorting to us in our contracting. So here's just some of our capabilities. I'm happy to chat about anything remotely related to pricing afterwards if you feel like you need us. We are the best in the world. I'm a bit biased, but we are really good. And just to give a kind of ground and just to get us all based in the conversation. So the reason why we want to talk a bit more about the supply chain is that we've had a really exciting year, and in fact, the last decade in terms of electrification, right? We've seen, just as an example on the top left, massive growth in Norway. They're nearly at 100% EV penetration rate. China, we've seen some of the manufacturers there this month post monthly records for EV sales. And even in emerging markets, Thailand being a great example in the bottom left, posting 190% year-on-year growth. The reason why I note these kind of data points is to highlight the fact that we're on the journey towards something really exciting, okay? And we're noticing rapid growth. But with that comes a need to understand some of the risks in the space. Notably, all of this growth could be upended or usurped if we don't have an understanding of where prices are going to go. And we would argue that there are some risks in those prices that most people aren't talking about, particularly in India, which is a net importer of battery raw materials. Hence why I'm here talking about this. So here's how I'm going to break down my presentation. We've got two different parts. The first is I'm going to showcase to you guys that while we are in a period of oversupply, in the long term, we are seeing deficits for lithium that will have a notable impact on pricing. Number two, I'm going to deep dive into what some of those risks will entail in terms of our market. So most of that being in terms of cell costs. So we're going to get going. My first section is showcasing that while our current landscape of BRM is weak and it's dominated by oversupply, we need to look out to the 2030s to understand what's going to go on there as we build this world that we're living in. So just to start out, what I've included here is a graph showing inventory in China for lithium, in addition to the salts, CAM, and also on the EV section, okay? So what you can see going out to April 2024 is that we are in a period of notable oversupply, inventory particularly for lithium-ion batteries and for salts ratcheting up massively. Why is this the case? We need to understand the fact that we're in a period whereby China has completely smashed it, to be blunt. They have tripled their mining footprint. So if we look out to 2023, they've got 30 active Chinese operations that have come online over the past couple of years, 9 Chinese operations also in Americas and Africa, shipping DSO, and they're now producing around 30,000 tons of LCE. That is a marked increase from where we were a couple of years ago and showcases just how much control China can have of the global supply. What's the lesson here? We should never underestimate China. In this graph on the right-hand side, you can see how much excess process supply lithium has been brought onto the Chinese market over the last couple of months. So spodumene there with an increase of 108% year-on-year, lepidolite by 126. They are incredibly adept at bringing new supply to market, and that is why we are currently in a period of oversupply. And just as a kind of historical note, this is exactly what China did with nickel in Indonesia as well. What we're seeing generally is that this oversupply is making the market really difficult to grow outside of China. So what we've noticed is that our clients are finding it really difficult to build supply and build new mines in other regions because of the cost competitiveness and the inability to find customers if there's already a lot of oversupply in the market. Particularly in the US, we're seeing the IRA try and solve that. But there's a lot of technicalities going on there that are making it difficult with the FTA, FEOC regulations for those partnerships to be built up. So oversupply still exists. However, and this is my big however, and this is when we should all raise some alarm bells. If we look out to the 2030s, and this graph on the right-hand side showcases this perfectly, we are expecting deficits across the entire suite of battery raw materials. So you can see that on the graph. And if we look at the coloring, the most notable being lithium. Why is this the case? And that's because in this period of oversupply that we've seen, the incentive price that our clients require to build a mine is way too low. So the current price of lithium is not incentivizing that level of build out and investment over the decade. And what does that mean? That means that while we have an oversupply right now, some of those mines are going to shut down. Some of that supply is going to be removed from the market. Green bushes, if you want an example in Australia, is a great example. And that means that we're going to see a resurgence of a deficit market coming to the fore, we argue, from 2028 onwards for lithium. And not only for lithium do we have issues in terms of risk when we look out to the 2030s. What we've got here is a rating scale for all the key battery raw materials, showcasing on a short and long term where the risks lie. And we can see when we look out to the longer term, for the majority of the metals, we have at least a middle to high end level of risk. And that's, as I've said, due to the fact that in the near term, we have that oversupply and have that control. But in the longer term, we're just not seeing that level of investment outside of China that can secure supply. So what does that mean in reality for us in the battery industry? Well, in this period of oversupply, it's been a beautiful thing in that we've seen a massive deduction of cell costs. So what you can see here in a graph is a brilliant work by my colleague Krishna. He runs our battery cost indexing. So that provides clients with real-time insights on not only historical cell costs, but if you're a cell producer or a developer or a buyer of cells, you can put in your own data to understand where your cell costs are going to go over the future. And what this graph is highlighting is that we've seen for LFP at least a 50-60% drop since 2022, but in this last year, at least a 30% drop for an average cell. Now, while that's great, and I'm showing you guys something that clients usually pay for here, so this is a bit of a winning ticket, we are noticing over the longer term something really crucial, and that relates back to the slide I just showed you guys on supply-demand deficit. We are expecting lithium prices, and what you can see here is LCE, so lithium carbonate, to rise notably from 2028 onwards because of that supply-demand deficit. So while right now we're expecting it to have a base of around $12 per kilogram, that is going to go out to the end of the decade, even in our high case, potentially reaching $44 per kilogram. And that's because the market's getting tighter, there's more deficits there, increasing our chances of volatility. Now, what does this mean as a result? This means that while right now, and maybe with some of our competitors, you see trajectories of cell costs going down rapidly as learning rates pick up and economies of scale increase. What we're actually seeing with our modeling is that cell costs are going to remain fairly flat. And that's largely due to the issue with raw material inputs. Particularly, cell costs are going to potentially even rise in regions outside of China, where they're trying to localize and regionalize supply chains. And India, I think, is part of that conversation due to the incentives going on here. So this you can see is an LFP from CATL that we've modeled over the decade. That's using real cell teardown data. So that's a CATL cell that we have, and we've used the real raw material values in there. And that makes us unique from our competitors who just do kind of academic modeling. And you can see going out to the decade, 48.5 by 2030 is the price that we think that's going to reach. Now, what does this mean? This means also a whole host of issues for the breadth of our other chemistries. And if we look at our fast markets passenger EV chemistry outlook for the decade, we can see that the majority of cells in that space for EVs globally is still lithium ion. So while we've seen a whole host of other chemistries come to market in the storage space, in the majority, we're going to see at least 98% going to remain lithium ion. So that means all of those deficits, those price rises that I've just shown you, are going to have a market impact across the EV space. The one benefit, though, and the one saving grace is going to be in the ESS space, which is where we think sodium ion will play. So our personal argument is that sodium ion doesn't really have a bearing on large four-wheelers due to the weight issues there. Maybe in a two-wheeler segment, but the cheapness of LFP, at least in the near term, just means that sodium can't compete. Where it does have a benefit and a way up is in ESS, and that's because weighting there doesn't matter as much as in EVs. So on the left, you can see our in-house ESS cell production forecast level. So that's cells just made for energy storage. And what you'll be able to see is that is growing up to 1.2 terawatts by 2034. And the graph on the right-hand side is showing where sodium ion is going to play in that kind of room there. So we're expecting that to grow to 261 gigawatts by 2034. So that will cushion some of the issues for the storage space, but not so much for the EV space if prices do rise. So what are our key takeaways? Well, for the long term, for the supply chain, we're seeing prices potentially be the biggest risk, right? So some of those deficits and some of those potential price rises will create some issues. Over the longer term, in terms of the supply chain, we're seeing those passenger EV chemistries that I just showcased potentially create some kind of balancing act, policy and some incentives, and also falling EV prices to kind of help the supply chain grow. However, I would argue that on the whole, we need to have more clarity on lithium pricing in order for the market to have confidence in where it's going over the decade. And that's where we as Fast Markets can help you guys to ensure that you have a real understanding of the risks that you're facing and that your business can do well in India, but also globally. All of the data that I've just showed is in our long-term forecasting and also our pricing. If you have any interest in that, really happy to chat about it afterwards and accept any questions. But thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much, Phoebe. That was a very insightful presentation that you just shared with us. And I definitely feel more intelligent now, thanks to you. And you're wearing a bright red. I can't help but say you look lovely and more beautiful than you did yesterday. So moving on, I can go on and on about Phoebe, but since we have paucity of time, thank you so much, everyone, for the lovely presentations and for enriching our experience and our intellect both on a mental and as well as a knowledge level. For those of you who are new in the room, I'm your host, Manu, and you are welcome to the second edition of the Battery Show India 2024 by Informa Markets. Now, to quickly show how much we appreciate your presence here, especially the presenters, the speakers who had shared their share of the knowledge here with us on the stage today. I'm sure everyone's feeling better and more informed now. So for that, I would request Phoebe here, since we felicitated her yesterday, so I've requested her to please felicitate all the other speakers on our behalf. So Phoebe, requesting you to please step forward at the center of the stage for better photographs for memory purposes. Thank you so much. The first presenter that I would like to call upon stage to get felicitated is Mr. Marcus Rover, Director, Global E-Mobility, Schuler Preston, GmbH. The topic of the presentation was moving battery cell housing production in India on the fast lane. Welcome, Marcus. Please step forward and go to Phoebe. Come on. Please come at the center of the stage because the camera is placed accordingly. Thank you. Thank you so much. And a huge round of applause. Come on. Thank you so much, Marcus. The next presenter that I would like to call upon stage to present with the memento as a token of our appreciation is Dr. Surendra Singh. Do we have Dr. Surendra Singh with us here? Excuse me, I have a sore throat, so I think he stepped out for a quick bite. Moving on, the next presenter that I would like to call upon stage is Mr. Baiju Parasuraman. Dr. Baiju, are you here? Okay, I think he's also currently unavailable. The next presenter that I would like to call upon stage is Mr. Ulrich Stude, Business Development Manager, HKO Worldwide. A huge round of applause for him, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here with us today and taking out the time. And then finally, last but not the least, inviting Dr. Inigo Anza, Global Technology Director, Morgan Advanced Materials, Molten Metal Systems. Huge round of applause for the gentleman.